So just a little housekeeping. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the question and answer tab. I usually don't answer the questions until the end of the webinar, so not to interrupt, but we can certainly go back in the slides if you have a question on a certain slide. A recording of this webinar will be posted on the Exida website and on our YouTube channel, and a copy of the slides will be emailed to everyone who signed up. Today we're going to talk about the Exida certificate and what it all means. So when a manufacturer whose product passes the Exida IEC 61508 assessment will receive a certificate based on IEC 61508 and perhaps other functional safety standards, whatever they were assessed to. There is a significant amount of information on this certificate that might not always be trivial for a novice. There are some things that are easily overlooked, and we wanted to take a webinar to explain how you should look at a certificate, use the certificate, and interpret all of the data on the Exida certificate. It's important that a user understands that the certificate never stands by itself. The certificate always has another document along with it. We have our assessment report, and the certificate has a lot of information on it, but there's details, greater details on certain portions in the assessment report. Both the certificate and the assessment report are posted by Exida on our Safety Automation Element List, the SAEL, and the manufacturer will have both the certificate and the assessment report for more detailed information for the product and the functional safety of the product. Just quickly about me, my name is Lauren Stewart. I graduated Virginia Tech in mechanical engineering. I now work with Exida, and I am involved with most of their mechanical customers. Along with certifications, I also do research on stiction. I work on the 2H initiative and are comparing failure rate information. We have Exida locations worldwide. I like to say no matter where you are or where your customers are, we have someone that's close by to get to either you or your customers for help. We are broken down into 4 main industrial focuses. We have our OEM side, our system designer side, our end user side, and our engineering contracting side. Each side we have consulting or people to help with that industry focus, and we also have tools that can help with the industry focus. We can also be broken down into different products and service categories. We put our hands in everything to do with functional safety, the process, the products, and the people. So we have consulting, our engineering tools, our product certification, our training, our reference materials, and our personnel certification. The certificate itself, that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this is a look at what a real Exida certificate looks like. The Exida has been established schemes for functional safety, cybersecurity, certification of systems, products, components, and personnel certification. In each of these certificates, it involves detailed analysis of both the engineering process and the design margins, so you have resulting in both random and systematic failures, which we're going to be talking about today. We also have cybersecurity certification, and we're going to talk about mostly IEC 61508 certification today, and not necessarily cybersecurity, but it is something that we definitely offer. We have a bunch of different reference materials. We like to say that we're an open book. So any research that we're doing, any information that we find, we like to get out there in a book and reference material. We like to share everything that could make the world a safer place. So we have it either published in white papers, books, databases. We have a lot of reference materials out there. And we have engineering tools. We have our, what started our engineering tools, our program called Excellentia, with modules for HAZOPs, LOPAs, SIL selection, SIL requirement specifications, SIL verification, proof test generator, and life cycle cost analysis. We also have newer programs for SIL Alarm, which is an alarm rationalization tool, and our SIL Stat tool, which is a field failure data collection and analysis tool, along with CyberFacts, which is our cyber risk assessment tool. So today we're going to talk about the exida certification. And to understand the certificate itself, I thought it would be best to say what's the process that the product goes through for the certification. So what happens in it? And that's going to be very quick, not a lot of detail, since that could be a full webinar itself. We also are going to talk about the exida certification sections. We're going to break it apart into each section of the certification. We're going to talk about the scope, the assessment level, the revision, the expiration, the main conformity declaration, the template, the failure rates, and the support documentation. And once we get through the steps, the different portions of the certificate, we're going to also look at how to interpret the certificate itself and give examples of interpreting the certificate. We're going to look at certification validity and how to tell if the certificate is valid or not, and also how the exida certification process relates to compliance. So let's start with what happens in an exida certification. As I said, this is just going to be a quick overview so everyone can understand what the process were to get that piece of paper, to get that assessment report, and to get that certification. So it always starts off with a kickoff meeting. This is so both parties, both us and the manufacturers, are fully aware of what is happening and what is expected on each party and what the end goal is. After we perform a kickoff meeting, we always do an FMEDA analysis on the product. We take each product, break it down into each bill of material, each part of the bill of material, and see how that could possibly break and how it could affect the failure rates. So we determine a failure rate, a failure mode, the likelihood of that happening, and we come out with safe failures and dangerous failures, both detected and undetected. We then do a proof and use analysis if the product has been in the field for a number of years. If it has been, we compare the proven and use analysis to the FMEDA results and failure rates to make sure that they line up. If it has not been in the field, we'll look at validation and verification test plans and test results. Then we look at the process analysis. We go through the quality system, the modification systems, every process document that might affect the SIL rated product. We then do an on-site audit, and then we finish up with a certification audit. And that audit is taking every requirement in IEC 61508, line item by line item, and making sure that this process and the product meet all of the requirements for 61508. And at the end, we create a safety case, which is our tool for comparing the requirements to the product and the process that we're now analyzing. And once we're finished, once the certifying assessor is finished, they hand it off to a second assessor. They go through then and double check that all of the requirements were met. So we have 2 people checking off on it. Once 2 people check off on the certification audit, we then write an assessment report and then issue the certification and the certificate. And now we are at the point where we look at what does this assessment report have, what does the certification have on it. So we're going to start by taking a certificate and breaking it off into sections. So this is a generic certificate. It's not a real one, but this is what one looks like. We have it broken off into 4 main sections. Starting on the left-hand side is the front page, and the right-hand side is the back page. And we start with the scope, assessment, level, the revision, and expiration. We then have our main conformity declaration, and that's the meat and the potatoes of the certificate. On the back of the certificate, we then have the certification template, and along with that, we have the failure rates and the support document, another crucial piece of the certificate. So we'll start on the front page on the left-hand side, the scope, the assessment level, revision, and expiration. The first thing we want to point out is our ANSI logo. At the bottom of the front page on the left-hand side, we have our ANSI logo along with our accreditation number. And for those of you not in the United States, you might not know what ANSI is, but it is a part of the International Accreditation Forum. And all of our certificates, our newer certificate, we didn't have it previously put on the certificate, but all of our newer certificates have our ANSI logo and our ANSI number on it. We are an accredited by ANSI, and they are an accredited assessment program or an accreditation body. There are different accreditation bodies for different countries: the UK, the Netherlands, Germany, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand. Every country has their own certification board, and they are all part of the International Accreditation Forum. So no matter who you go to for certification, make sure that they are accredited by a member of the IAF. And as long as they're accredited by the IAF, then you should be able to trust their certificate, trust their failure rates, all of that. So for our example, we're in the United States, so we're accredited by ANSI. Say you're in Germany, it would be the German equivalent, or the DAX. Further up on the left-hand side, you can see that we have our certification mark. This certification mark, anyone who's passed our certification is allowed to use our certification mark. And this mark has a lot of information in just a logo. It shows what it was assessed to, the SIL capability. So in reading just this mark, you can look and say, okay, whatever this product is on this certificate, the product has passed the Exida certification for IEC 61508 assessment scheme up to a SIL 3 capable level. So just that symbol tells you a lot of information. Below the symbol is the revision and expiration box. As you can see, this example, it's revision 1, so this is the first time it was revised. The certification was given out, and it was made up on this date. It also has a valid till date, which identifies when the certificate expires. So the certificate expires. Exida has an assessment scheme that allows manufacturers to make modifications as long as we have validated their modification process. If that is the case, we give them a valid until date on the certificate. After 3 years after the original certification, the valid until date will expire, and then we go back and do a recertification of the process and the product. So the next portion is the main conformity declaration. The very first part of the meat and potatoes of the certificate is the certification number. This will have a unique identifier for each certificate. So it will start with 3 letters, it will have 7 numbers, it will have the letter C and 3 numbers. So the 3 letters stand for the company that it was certified to, has 7 numbers, that was the product identifier, and which certificate in that project this was. Next, you have the product and manufacturer. So this is important because this defines the product and manufacturer of what exactly was evaluated in the assessment. This comes into play when there's multiple products sold by multiple manufacturers, and this product certification is for manufacturer A. That doesn't automatically mean manufacturer B is certified. They can have a different return process, a different customer notification process. They could have different modification processes. They could have different vendors, different materials coming in. And those are things that we all look for. So we will have a specific product for a specific manufacturer at a specific location on this certificate. Below that, you have the standards and the assessment level that the certificates were done to. This webinar is per the IEC 61508 2010 standard assessment. And we do our certificates and assessments for parts 1 through 7. And that's all relevant for the IEC 61508 assessment scheme of Exida. We've had questions that people ask, well, parts 5, 6, and 7 are informative. Why do you count them? Well, they still have valuable information in it. So we still make sure that parts 5, 6, and 7 are considered in the assessment. And for those of you who are familiar with part 3, even non-software based products, software development requirements are obviously excluded, but part 3 is still considered. And IEC 61508 contains development and process quality system requirements and product-specific performance requirements. So we're going to look at both of those portions in our assessment of the product and process. That breaks down into systematic capability and random capability. So below that is, as you can see, there's a box in your upper right-hand corner. That box is very important. The first line states the systematic capability. And if you're not necessarily familiar with functional safety, you might not know what that means. But the systematic capability comes down to the development process, the quality system requirements, the modification process, all of the documentation on the quality and the process. So what that means is a higher SIL level is a more stringent requirements. So for example, if a software architecture or design, the fault detection might not be required for SIL 1. It's recommended for SIL 2 and is highly recommended for SIL 3. So for the different SIL levels, we look at more and more requirements. The systematic capability indicates the level of development of the process and the quality systems considered. For example, if a product systematic capability is SIL 3, the development process considered meets IEC 61508 SIL 3 requirements. Therefore, the product can be used in SIL 3 applications. It can be used in SIL 2 applications, and it can be used in SIL 1 applications. But if the product is only a systematic capability for SIL 2, the product can be used in SIL 2 applications and SIL 1 application. It cannot be used in SIL 3 application. But do not just say, oh, this is a SIL 3 capable. I can just put it into my system and not worry about it. Absolutely not. You need to look at the architectural constraints. You need to look at your entire system. There might need to be a redundancy taken care of. There needs to be a lot of calculations to look at. You can't just see something SIL 3 capable, put it into a SIL 3 and leave it alone and not do anything about it. Below the systematic capability in the box, we have random capability. And once again, this has a lot of important information in it. Random capability is the product-specific requirements. This has to do with the probability of failure for an entire SIF, and the hardware fault tolerance, the minimum hardware fault tolerance for an element. But the probability of failure limits apply to an entire SIF. An achieved SIL for a PFD cannot be conducted for a single product. So the exida certification specifies that the PFD needs to be verified for each application. You cannot just take one PFD number and reapply it for multiple applications. The minimum hardware fault tolerance can be specified if the product constitutes a complete element. So an actuator is a component of an element, and the whole systematic or the architectural constraints for the whole SIL cannot be conducted. But a transmitter is a complete element, therefore the SIL architectural constraints is specified. So certificates also list if there are a type B or a type A equipment type. And this has to do with if a type A is a simple mechanical device, a type B has self-diagnostics, so it's a more complex device. And there is different requirements per IEC 61508 for type A and for type B devices. This also lists the architectural constraints, and they're specified. You can see in the box it says SIL 1 hardware fault tolerance is 0. SIL 2 hardware fault tolerance 1. That talks about if redundancy is needed or not, and that's per Route 1H. And that's defined in IEC 61508. Or this product could meet SIL 2 at hardware fault tolerance 0, or SIL 3 at hardware fault tolerance 1 per Route 2H, depending on what way the product was analyzed. The next portion is the safety function and the application restrictions. So the product is certified for a specific safety function. The certification is only valid if the product is used within the constraints of the published safety function. For example, a shutoff valve is most likely certified for on-off applications, so it would exclude the control function applications. The product is also certified for a specific application. You need to consider the environmental limits and a lot of other things which will be documented in the product safety manual. And finally, at the bottom of the front of the certificate, you have the assessors. The exida assessment scheme requires 2 independent assessors to evaluate the product's compliance. You have your evaluating assessor, which performs the majority of the activities. Excuse me, including the FMEDA, if there's software, the software analysis, the safety case, which we talked about. Once the evaluating assessor feels that the safety case is finished, they hand it over to the certifying assessor, which establishes a complete independent review of the product, the manufacturer's development process and quality system, and the safety case is then signed off by the second assessor. Once both assessors sign off on the safety case, then the assessment can be signed off on, and the assessment report and the certificate are ready to be created and signed. Now we're going to go ahead and look at the back of the certificate. On the back of the certificate, we're going to start with, once again, the left-hand side, and we're going to look at the certification template. So because exida always reviews the scheme and we continually update our methods to make sure that we are doing the best that we can, there is a template and a version and revision number. And that's why you can look down and always see what version and revision of the template is used. And that might explain why an old certificate might look a little different, or different or similar product might differ if we've updated the template. If you ever have a question on the template and want the most up-to-date certificate, it's always posted on the SAEL along with the assessment report. The next section, which is extremely important, is the failure rates and support documentation section. On the back of the certificate, we list our failure rates. In this section, it would be where the add table here section would be, in the very middle of the page. At Exida, we do not publish the PFD average numbers on the certificates. Doing the calculation for a PFD for a SIF includes proof test interval, proof test coverage, mission time, maintenance capability. There's a lot of things that go into the calculation. And most of those things are something that we don't know and the manufacturer won't know. It was just things that the end user will know. So if we publish a PFD average number, it would be to make assumptions at some of these numbers, which doesn't always lead to the correct answer. So we do not publish the PFD average numbers on our certificate. And publishing it could imply that mandatory test intervals and procedures that we don't necessarily know. And the final PFD average calculation can only be determined by the end user. Therefore, we publish our failure rates, and those numbers are what the end user needs to perform the calculations. On the back of the certificate, we show a table that publishes safe detected, safe undetected, and dangerous detected, dangerous undetected failure rates. And details of these definitions are supplied in the assessment report. Where it's applicable, we use different tables. We could have the normal table and the partial valve stroke test table. We could do clean service and severe service. So there's different applications that might have multiple tables on the back of the certificate, or there could be multiple tables in the assessment report if you need more information. At the bottom of the certificate, it shows supporting documentation. It will always cite the assessment report, the name of it, and the name of the safety manual. The assessment report and the certificate, always the most up-to-date, are on the SAEL website. You can get through the Exida website itself. And the safety manuals will always be provided by the manufacturer. And once again, always check the safety manuals or their IOMs for restrictions. It could be environmental restrictions. It could be safety function restrictions. Always look at the safety manual to make sure that you're not using the device in a way that it's not going to be supported by the certificate. So I always learn best by examples. So I pulled different certifications to get some different examples for you. The first example we're looking at is a level transmitter. So if we take a look, first thing you see on the bottom left-hand corner is our ANSI logo, and above that we have, you can see this was evaluated per IEC 61508, and it is the SIL 3 capable. It also has the revision and the valid until date. On this, you have your systematic capability, SIL 3 capable. You have your random capability, and it says the safety functions and application restrictions with signatures. On the back of the certificate, you can see you have a table, and it is broken up into safe and dangerous detected and undetected failure rates for both a low trip and the high trip application. And at the very bottom of the page, you can see the assessment report and the safety manual. Next, we're going to look at the digital valve positioner. And this is just, once again, a random one I picked off the SAEL. Once again, starting from left to right, you can see our ANSI logo, IEC 61508, SIL 3 capable. This is valid until October 1st, 2016. You can see the systematic capability is SIL 3 capable. The random capability, it's a type A device, and it was evaluated route 1H. It has your safety function and your application restrictions along with signatures. If you go on the back, you can see that you have two separate tables, and they are for different applications. You have also it broken up into normal and partial valve stroke tests for each of the applications, along with their failure rates. At the bottom of the page, you can see that they have listed the assessment report and the safety manual. Next, we have our gate valve. And for this gate valve, once again, the ANSI logo. In the mark, you see it's evaluated per IEC 61508, and it's SIL 3 capable. This is valid until December 1st, 2017. In the middle of the certificate, you can see that you have SIL 3 capable device. This is a type A route 2H device with signatures. And on the back of the certificate, you can see that it was broken up into multiple applications. You have a full stroke, a tight shut off, and open on trip application, and the same, all three of those, with partial valve stroke test considered. So you can get failure rates for any way you decide to use this product. At the bottom, it also has the assessment report listed and the safety manual listed. So how can you tell if a certificate is valid? What does this mean? Well, there's really, really great things that come with success, but there's also some negative things that come with success. One of the negative things that come with success is counterfeit certificates. So the certification program obviously is very successful. Exida certificates are recognized worldwide. Many end users recognize Exida application knowledge, and manufacturers realize that this isn't just a rubber stamp. This actually means something. It's something of substance. But not all manufacturers and not all products pass. So there are counterfeit certificates on the market. These are just a couple of examples of counterfeit certificates that we found. These weren't necessarily the companies that did them. It could have been their end user needed a quick certificate, but these are all counterfeit certificates. So how do you determine if something is authentic or not? Well, always go to the SAEL. Exida always posts all products that they certify and all assessment reports with their certificate, with the latest one on the SAEL. So double check your certificate. If it's not on the SAEL, something might be a little strange. So how does the Exida certification relate to compliance? You went through this whole process. Why does this really matter? Well, when you're talking about IEC 61508, compliance is broken up into 3 sections. And to be compliant with IEC 61508, you must meet all 3 portions. You have your SIL capability, your probability of failure, and your architectural constraints. When you put all 3 together and you have a happy marriage in the middle, that's where you get complete compliance. If you look down at the bottom, this is that square now from the certificate. First of all, we can address the SIL capability. That's the same as systematic capable. You have your SC3 or SIL 3 capable. That's that first circle there. Next, you have your probability of failure, which is the PFD average, and your architectural constraints right there on the bottom of the box. For each device, we state that the PFD average and the architectural constraints must be verified for each application in your SIF. Your PFD average and your architectural constraints will change from SIF to SIF. So when you get all of your portions together, at that point is when you can determine your PFD average and your architectural constraints. And only when you meet all three of these are you fully compliant. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and see if there are any questions. And at this point, we do not have any, but if you do think of any later on, please feel free to email me, and please feel free to email me at my email address listed right there, and I can go ahead and get back with you at a later point of date. I see a specific question come in. If you go ahead and email me to my email address, I'll be able to address that specific question to you better. I hope everybody has enjoyed the webinar, and thank you for attending.